Brooklyn. Late December. The wind from the East River cut like knives, carrying the metallic scent of steel and the damp smoke of ships anchored at the docks. Sophia Bennett was used to that wind, the kind of dry, biting cold only New York could muster, where people learned to stand tall amid the chaos. She had just finished a 16-hour shift at Ambulance Station 47, eyes burning from caffeine and exhaustion. Her old pickup rattled as it crossed the Williamsburg Bridge, streetlights glinting off the dust-streaked windshield. On the radio, a low male voice spoke about a highway accident somewhere east of the city. Sophia sighed. Tonight, all she wanted was a hot shower and to curl up under a blanket with her cat, Oliver. But fate was rarely kind to those who saved lives. It liked to pull them back to the thin line between life and death, where the heart had to be stronger than reason. At the turn near the docks, a blinding flash tore through the darkness. A deafening explosion followed, and black smoke rose like a wild beast unleashed. A black Mercedes had slammed into a steel post, flames roaring to life in the freezing night. Without thinking, Sophia slammed the brakes, tossed her keys aside, and sprinted out of the truck. The wind screamed, metal groaned, and somewhere in the chaos came the faint, desperate cry of a child. She ran toward it, pulling her coat over her face, crouching low through the fire. The heat seared her skin. The stench of gasoline and smoke clawed at her throat. Through the haze, she spotted a small figure, a boy trapped in the back seat, his face streaked with tears and soot. "Hey, sweetheart, don't be afraid, I'm here," she shouted, hands trembling as she fumbled for the seatbelt. A secondary explosion blasted the door open. She yanked the boy free, just as the flames swallowed the rest of the car. They both collapsed onto the icy ground. Sophia wrapped her coat around him and pressed her ear to his chest. The heartbeat was there, faint but steady. She rolled him to his side, checked for injuries, scratches, a scraped knee, but alive. The boy opened his eyes gray as ashes and whispered, "Where's my dad?" Sophia turned. The car was now a burning skeleton. No one else in sight. Grabbing her radio, she called 911. "Accident, Brooklyn docks. One child victim. Need an ambulance immediately." Then she lifted the boy, whispering comfort as she carried him away from the blaze. His small hand clutched her neck, ice cold. As she adjusted the coat around him, something metallic slipped from his pocket, a silver lighter engraved with LW Elegant. Expensive. Still warm with the scent of smoke. "Is this your father's?" The boy nodded weakly, tears spilling before he passed out in her arms. The ambulance arrived, but before Sophia could say more, 3 black SUVs slid in like shadows. Doors opened in unison. Men in black suits stepped out, earpieces glinting, eyes cold. One of them approached, his English thick with an Italian accent. "Thank you, Ms. Bennett. The young master needs to be taken home immediately." Sophia stepped back, her instincts on high alert. "I'm sorry, but I haven't handed the patient over to a hospital yet. Who are you?" The man gave her a look of mild pity. "My name is Sergio. All you need to know is that this boy is the son of Lorenzo Whitmore, and you just saved the heir to his empire." The name froze the air. Sophia had heard it, Lorenzo Whitmore, the press's shadow tycoon, a man whose empire stretched from real estate to things no one dared to name. She swallowed hard. "I need to go with him. He's in shock." Sergio studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Very well, but from this moment on, Ms. Bennett, you're under Whitmore protection." They ushered both of them into an SUV. As the car sped across the bridge, Sophia held the boy close, staring out the window. City lights splintered in her eyes like shards of broken glass. Part of her wanted to believe she was simply doing her duty, but deep inside, something darker stirred the sense that she had just crossed into a world with no way back. The hospital they arrived at wasn't like any Sophia had seen. No signs, no bustle, just a pristine white building tucked between glass towers, scented with oak and expensive disinfectant. Her hands trembled as she signed a few papers. When she asked, "May I see the boy's family?" Sergio only replied, "He's on his way." Moments later, the sound of leather shoes echoed down the corridor. The door opened. The man who entered moved with unnerving calm amid the tension. Black suit, ash gray tie, dark brown hair. His gaze was sharp enough to slice the air. Yet when his eyes fell on the sleeping child, They softened just enough for Sophia to glimpse the humanity still flickering inside him. "You're the one who saved my son." His voice was deep, slightly hoarse in Italian-American lilt, polite but edged with danger. "Yes, I just did my job. Your job," he said, stepping closer. "Gave my heart a reason to keep beating." Sophia instinctively stepped back. He was too close, too composed, and the way he looked at her, it wasn't gratitude. It was control. "Ms. Bennett," he murmured, "I owe you a life, and I don't leave debts unsettled." She wanted to answer, but words failed her. Outside the window, snow had begun to fall, thin flakes dissolving in the yellow light like smoke. And in that fragile silence, Sophia had the uneasy feeling that her life would never be the same again. As she left the room, Sergio handed her the silver lighter. "The boss says you should keep it," he said. "When you need answers, open it." Sophia frowned. Turning the cold metal in her palm, she flicked it open. Inside the lid, a line was engraved, delicate as a hurried scar. "Trust no one." A shiver ran down her spine. She looked up. The hallway was empty. Only the faint scent of oak lingered, like the echo of a dream. When she got home, Sophia turned on the light. Her small Brooklyn apartment seemed to shrink into silence. She set the lighter on the table beside a stack of medical reports. But its silvery gleam kept catching her eye, a cold reminder that tonight had been more than just an accident. She switched on the TV. A car explosion at Brooklyn docks. The victim is believed to be the private driver of the Whitmore Group. Police have not released details. Sophia turned it off. Her heart pounded. The driver. Not Lorenzo. Then who was the man burned in the car? And how had the powerful Lorenzo Whitmore appeared so quickly, knowing exactly where his son was? She looked at the lighter. In her mind, a faint crackle of fire mingled with the pounding of her heartbeat. The boy's gray eyes flashed before her, along with that low, smoky voice, "I owe you a life." Sophia smiled faintly, trembling, uneasy. She knew a debt like that could cost anything. And deep down, she felt it a quiet certainty that her fate and Lorenzo Whitmore's had only just begun to intertwine. If your heart stirred at the fateful meeting between Sophia and Lorenzo, continue with part 2, The Man in the Black Suit. The secrets are only beginning to unfold, and sometimes, a single spark can burn down an entire life. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the thin curtains, scattering faint streaks of gold across the wooden floor. Sophia awoke in that blurred space between dream and reality. Last night, the explosion, the child, the man with eyes like steel veiled in frost, all of it lingered like a nightmare refusing to fade. She sat up, her hand instinctively reaching for the silver lighter on the table. In daylight, it was still cold and impossibly refined. The initials LW etched deep like a metallic wound. Inside, the words, "Trust." No one glimmered words that had kept her awake all night. Trust no one. But who was she supposed to trust? And why her? Sophia dressed in uniform and arrived at the ambulance station earlier than usual. Everyone was talking about the explosion from the night before. The news had spread everywhere. Whitmore Group's luxury car accident suspected foul play. Someone chuckled. Whitmore's cursed again. Huh, seems like fate enjoys messing with him. Sophia said nothing. She didn't want to mention she'd been there or the boy. In the world of the powerful, people like her were just a line in a report, a detail easily erased. By mid-shift, her personal phone rang. A deep, steady male voice spoke. "Ms. Bennett, this is Lorenzo Whitmore. I need to see you." She tightened her grip on the phone. His tone wasn't a request, it was a command dressed in civility. "About last night, I believe that matter's closed." "Mr. Whitmore." "Not quite," he said quietly. "When someone touches the life of my son, it's never a small matter. I'd like to thank you personally." Before Sophia could refuse, he gave her an address. Whitmore Tower, 59 Park Avenue, and hung up. Whitmore Tower, a skyscraper that seemed to pierce the clouds, its mirrored glass reflecting all of Manhattan. Standing in the lobby, Sophia felt like a tiny speck in the maze of power. The receptionist recognized her at once and led her to the 58th floor. When the elevator doors slid open, she stepped into another world: marble floors, glass walls overlooking the East River, And at the center, a man in a black suit, standing with his back to her, a glass of red wine in hand. "You're here." His voice floated softly, almost a whisper, but enough to stop her in her tracks. He turned. Every line of his face came into focus: the straight nose, the cold eyes that seemed to read thoughts. Yet when he saw her, the corner of his mouth curved into a strange, unreadable half-smile. Part welcome, part appraisal. "Thank you for coming. I know you dislike meetings like this, but I'm a man who prefers to look his debts in the eye." Sophia steadied her voice. "You owe me nothing. I was just doing my job. I understand. But debts aren't measured by profession. Ms. Bennett?" He set the glass down and walked toward her, each step calm, deliberate. "I want to make sure you and Noah are safe." She frowned slightly. "Noah, is he all right?" "He is. Sleeping at home. But last night's explosion wasn't an accident. Someone meant to target my son." The air thickened instantly. Sophia clenched her fists. "I don't understand why you're telling me this. I'm just a bystander." "No. You stepped into the fire. That makes you something else entirely." He held her gaze. In that instant, she realized the most dangerous thing about Lorenzo Whitmore wasn't his wealth or power. It was the way his eyes could make people forget who they were. An assistant brought in a tray of coffee. Lorenzo gestured toward the seat across from him. "Sit. Let's talk like two ordinary people." "Ordinary people?" She gave a faint, ironic smile. "Do ordinary people drink coffee on the 58th floor while looking down on the city? No. But sometimes ordinary people find themselves in extraordinary places." The line, tossed off so lightly, made her pulse quicken. He told her he had once been a soldier Italian Special Forces before inheriting the Whitmore Empire after his father's death. Then came the markets, the underworld, politics all blurring together to create a man everyone feared. Sophia listened in silence. His voice was low, unhurried, occasionally tinged with sadness. "When you saw my child trapped in that car, you didn't run. I want to understand why." She looked up. "Because I can't stand watching someone die when I can stop it." He smiled faintly, not with his lips, but in his eyes, something rare flickering there. "That answer," he said softly, "makes me believe you." She replied just as quietly, as if to remind herself, "I don't need you to." The meeting ended shortly after, but as she stood to leave, Lorenzo added, "I've placed security around your building. Don't refuse it. You have no right. When the people trying to kill me might come for you, rights stop mattering." His tone dropped, almost a warning. In the light streaming through the glass, his eyes held a tenderness she didn't know how to name or trust. She left with her heart racing. In the hallway, a draft carried the faint scent of cedar from his office, warm, masculine, haunting. That evening, when Sophia returned home, a bouquet of white lilies waited on her kitchen table, perfectly arranged in a crystal vase. No card, no name, just a small note tucked between the petals. "So I can rest knowing you're safe. L.W." She stood there for a long time, unsure whether to feel moved or afraid. Part of her wanted to throw the flowers away to cut ties with the man completely. But another part, softer, weaker, wanted to keep them to know that someone, somewhere, still remembered her, even for a moment. Rain began to fall, tapping against the windows. Sophia sat by the glass, the silver lighter in her hand. She flicked it open. A tiny blue flame danced in the dark. Strangely, it made her feel warm, though she knew it had once taken a life. Then her phone buzzed. A message, no number. "Don't trust Whitmore. That fire didn't just save lives." She froze. Someone knew. Someone was watching her. Outside, a black car sat at the curb, its headlights just fading out. A cold unease tightened in her chest like invisible fingers closing around her heart. The next morning, at the hospital, Sergio was waiting for her. He bowed politely. "The boss would like you to check on Noah. The boy keeps calling your name in his sleep." Sophia hesitated. Then compassion won. She went with them to the Whitmore estate on the outskirts of the city, a mansion both grand and lonely, where every sound seemed to be swallowed by the old stone walls. Noah lay in bed, his ash-gray eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Angel," he cried. voice bright and small. She smiled gently, her heart softening. "How are you feeling?" "Noah." "Will you stay with me? Dad's always working." His voice trailed off. The sadness in his eyes made her squeeze his hand. From the doorway, Lorenzo watched in silence. In the midday light, his face looked less sharp, less guarded, and somehow more human. That, she realized, was what made him most dangerous. He stepped closer, voice low. "I haven't seen Noah smile like that since his mother died." Sophia turned. Their eyes met not in words, but in a silence that could make anyone lose their way. When she left that afternoon, Lorenzo walked her to the door. "I know you're afraid, but don't let fear be the reason you walk away. Do you think I even have a choice? You do. You can walk out now, or you can stay. But if you stay, I can't promise you'll be safe." The wind stirred through the garden, making the white lilies tremble like a breath. Sophia looked at him for a long moment. "I don't want to be part of your world, Lorenzo. And I," he said softly, "don't know how to stop wanting to keep you in it for even the smallest reason." She turned away, afraid to look again. But as her car drove past the gates, she caught a glimpse of him in the rearview mirror standing there, hands in his pockets, as if afraid that reaching out might make her vanish. That night, she dreamed. In the dream, flames roared, consuming the shadow of a man. A child's voice called her name from far away, then faded into silence. When she woke, her forehead was damp with sweat. The silver lighter lay on the pillow beside her, open, its tiny blue flame still flickering. She touched it, and noticed new words carved faintly beneath the lid. "Thin as thread, every fire has a price." She lifted her gaze. Outside the window, a dark figure slipped out of the alley, coat fluttering in the wind. Her heart clenched. Someone had been inside her home and left, as quietly as a shadow. In that moment, Sophia knew she had truly crossed into Lorenzo Whitmore's darkness. And from here, there was no turning back. It had been raining for 3 days straight. Brooklyn was veiled in a silver mist, and everything around Sophia seemed painted in a new shade, not quite sad, not quite peaceful, just strange. As if she were living inside a dream where, even after waking, the smell of smoke still clung to her skin. Since her last visit to the Whitmore estate, Sophia's life had changed in ways she couldn't fully grasp. On the surface, she still worked her shifts, still drove the ambulance through chaos and sirens, but somewhere deeper in that quiet, hidden part of her, something had begun to burn, a small, steady flame that refused to die. That morning, when she stepped outside, a small wooden box sat by her door, tied with a white satin ribbon. No sender's name. She opened it. Inside lay a bouquet of white lilies and a handwritten note. "Thank you for making Noah smile. L." Just one letter, but it made her heart skip. The scent of lilies pure, gentle, but chilling filled her tiny apartment, seeping into every breath. She stood still, the note trembling between her fingers, caught somewhere between tenderness and unease. No one sent white lilies without a reason. They were flowers of parting, of remembrance. But when the sender was Lorenzo Whitmore, nothing could be taken at face value. That night, when Sophia left the ambulance station, the rain had turned heavy. Driving home, she noticed a black car following her close enough to be noticed. Far enough to feign coincidence. She turned down 3 different streets, then onto a deserted road. The car stayed behind. Her chest tightened. She pulled over, hand reaching for her phone to call the police. But before she could, the car stopped. The door opened and out stepped Sergio. He wore a soaked overcoat, rain dripping from his hat, voice low and even as, "Bennett, forgive me for alarming you. The boss wants to make sure you're safe. There are people displeased that you had contact with the boy." "Safe," she shot back. "Is stalking your idea of safety?" For Mr. Whitmore, safety means you're still breathing, still coming home, still finding flowers at your door. Believe me, it's the only way he knows how to care. He inclined his head, then left her standing in the rain, angry, helpless. But beneath the anger, Sophia felt something unfamiliar, a quiet pulse inside her chest. Some part of her didn't entirely hate being cared for. 3 days later, Another package arrived at the ambulance station this time, a steaming cup of her favorite coffee latte with cinnamon and almond milk. A folded note rested on top. Those who save lives deserve a warm morning. No signature. But she knew who it was from. She took a sip, the light bitterness spreading across her tongue, melting into warmth that felt like a whispered thank you. All day, Sophia found herself smiling more than usual. She didn't know why. Maybe because, for once, she felt seen even in the strangest way. That evening, a call came from the private hospital where Noah was staying. A nurse's gentle voice spoke through the line. "The boy keeps asking for you. If you can, please come by. He can't sleep." Without hesitation, Sophia drove over. Outside the room, Lorenzo stood by the window, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened. The lamplight cast weary shadows across his face, yet he still carried that unnerving calm. "You came," he said, voice rougher than usual. "I didn't realize Noah had grown so attached to you." "Children sense things quickly," she replied softly. "They trust the people who make them feel safe." He looked at her, and for the first time, a faint smile touched his eyes. "Then maybe I should learn how to do that." Sophia stepped closer and noticed Noah's sketchbook on the bedside table. He had drawn her a woman in an EMT jacket, carrying a child out of the flames. Around them, fire blazed, but at the center was a circle of light where she stood. "He's talented," she murmured. "I've hired half a dozen tutors, and none of them could make him pick up a pencil," Lorenzo said, genuine surprise in his tone. "And you did it in one night." Sophia flushed. "I didn't do anything." "Exactly," he said quietly. "That's what makes you different." The words were soft as breath, yet they shook something deep inside her. Noah fell asleep after the bedtime story she told him. When she rose to leave, Lorenzo gently caught her wrist. "Walk with me. The garden's beautiful at night." They stepped outside. The garden behind the hospital was filled entirely with white lilies, their petals gleaming like silk beneath the moon. The air was so still that she could hear her own heartbeat. "Noah's mother loved these flowers," Lorenzo said, gaze distant. "I planted them for him, but every time I see them, I can't tell if I'm remembering her or punishing myself." Sophia stayed silent. Under the moonlight, the sharp lines of his face softened, revealing a fatigue, a loneliness, so human it almost hurt to look at. "Some wounds don't need to be healed," she said quietly. "They just need someone patient enough to sit beside them until they stop hurting." He turned toward her, eyes filled with unspoken things. "What if that someone is you?" Sophia's pulse faltered, but her voice stayed calm. "Then don't say what you can't keep." He smiled faintly, tilting his head. The moonlight traced his jaw, making the smile both warm and dangerous. "I'm not making promises. I'm just telling the truth." They stood there, surrounded by silence and flowers swaying in the wind. For a moment, Sophia wanted to believe that something ordinary, something gentle, could exist between them in a world made of shadows. But peace was never something that belonged to Lorenzo Whitmore. The next morning, the news showed a burning car in the East Industrial District. The anchor's voice was flat. A Whitmore Group employee was killed in an explosion, reportedly caused by a gas leak. Police are investigating. Sophia froze. At that same moment, her phone rang an unknown number. "Ms. Bennett." A man's urgent voice whispered. "Where are you? You need to leave your home. You're being watched." Before she could ask, the line went dead. The window behind her rattled as if someone had just slipped away. She looked around. Everything seemed untouched. Except for one thing, a slip of paper had fallen from the bouquet of lilies on her table. She picked it up. Scrawled in black ink were the words, "Don't trust him. Even lilies can lie." Her pulse thundered. Who wrote it? Who knew about her and Lorenzo? Fragments flashed through her mind, the anonymous text, the lighter engraved, "Trust no one," and Lorenzo's quiet smile beneath the moonlight. Maybe someone was playing a game far more dangerous than she'd realized. That night, Sophia went to Whitmore Tower. She wanted answers about the gifts, the warnings, the deaths. But when she arrived, the receptionist told her Mr. Whitmore just left. Urgent matter outside the city. Would you like to leave a message? She turned to go, then noticed a small package on the counter with her name on it. Inside was a leather notebook. On the first page, written hastily in ink, "If you're reading this, stay away from the lake house. Someone wants you gone." The ink was still wet. Sophia looked up. Through the glass wall, across the rain-slicked street, a figure stood watching her black coat, hood drawn low. When the streetlight flickered, she caught a flash of silver in his hand. A lighter, identical to Lorenzo's. In that instant, she understood. The fire that started it all hadn't just been an accident. It was a message from a secret that had never died. She stepped back, heart pounding. Outside, the rain kept falling, and somewhere in the glittering city, two flames were burning, one belonging to Lorenzo Whitmore, the other to her. And between them, all it would take was a single breath of wind to turn everything to ash. Morning in Manhattan was unusually clear. Sunlight streamed through the window, spreading across the polished wooden floor of Sophia's small Brooklyn apartment, where she sat quietly, a cup of cold coffee in her hand. Her eyes stayed fixed on the open leather notebook on the table, the one someone had left for her at Whitmore Tower 3 days earlier. The hurried handwriting still stood stark on the page. "If you're reading this, stay away from the lake house. Someone wants you gone." Since that moment, Sophia hadn't slept a full night. Every time she closed her eyes, the image of the silver lighter flashing in the rain returned a silent warning that refused to fade. She had once believed Lorenzo was behind it all. But then, his silence began to confuse her. Liars hid behind words, but Lorenzo didn't bother hiding at all. He neither explained nor denied anything. And somehow, that made her unsure whether to fear him or trust him. That afternoon, just as she ended her shift, a sleek black car stopped at the hospital gate. The driver stepped out and said simply, "Whitmore invites you to lunch. Only 1 hour." Sophia hesitated, but the driver's gaze, sincere, almost earnest, made it impossible to refuse. Part of her wanted to keep her distance. Another part wanted answers. The car drove her along the Hudson River to a small, secluded restaurant by the water. No sign, no luxury, just glass walls opening onto the dark blue surface of the river. Lorenzo was waiting on the terrace. Sunlight slanted across his gray suit, catching faint metallic tones. When he saw her, he rose. "I know you're still angry," he said, voice calm but low. "But I hope you'll give me a chance to explain." Sophia sat across from him, her eyes as cold as the river wind. "Explain what? The gifts? Or the fact that I'm being watched?" He didn't look away. "Both," he said, "and more." The waiter placed 2 glasses of wine and left. Lorenzo was silent for a moment, then spoke slowly, as if weighing every word. "Do you know why I can't remove you from my protection? Because the night you saved Noah, you entered their sightline. There," she repeated. "The ones who've wanted me dead," he said, voice dropping. "The ones behind the car explosion." A chill ran down her spine. "You're saying that wasn't an accident?" "It was a message," he admitted. "Not to me, to anyone who dares to touch what I protect." Sophia tightened her grip on the glass. "And I was the one who touched it." He nodded. "No one saves a life in my world and walks away untouched." Sophia. The way he said her name slow, almost tender, broke through her anger like a crack in glass. There was another meaning beneath his tone, something close to regret, or fear of losing her. The meal passed mostly in silence. Now and then, Lorenzo shared small fragments about Noah, how he refused to sleep without an angel-shaped lamp, how he painted skies in gray instead of blue. Sophia listened, her guard softening with each word. Then, out of nowhere, she asked, "Have you ever loved anyone truly loved them?" He looked up, a faint smile touching his lips. "I once thought I had, but love in my world doesn't last long. It dies slowly, smothered by fear." And now she asked quietly. His eyes met hers deep, steady, almost unbearable. "Now I fear something else, that if I ever love again, I'll destroy the person I love." The words were simple, but they cut like a blade through the softest part of her heart. She turned away, watching sunlight shimmer on the river, listening to the rhythm of waves against the shore steady, like breathing. And in that moment, She understood perhaps he only knew how to love by controlling what he couldn't bear to lose. When lunch was nearly over, Lorenzo placed a black envelope before her. "You should see this." Inside were photographs, pictures of her at the hospital, outside her apartment, at the grocery store. But what froze her blood was the shadowed figure in the corner of each frame, a man's face half lit, half hidden, watching her from a distance. "His name is Victor Drago," Lorenzo said. "He was once my associate. Now he's my enemy. The car explosion was his warning. And he knows who you are." Sophia inhaled sharply. "Why me? Because you saved my son. Because I couldn't hide how I look at you." The confession hung between them like smoke. Sophia felt her heart stutter fear, pity, anger, all tangled together. "You shouldn't say that." "I know," he murmured, "but you need to understand. The night you pulled Noah from the flames, something in me changed. I owe you, but what I want to give back isn't gratitude anymore." His voice was so low she almost missed it. She turned away, afraid to meet those eyes again. By the river, the wind rose, carrying the scent of salt and sunlight. Sophia pulled her coat tighter and asked if Victor Drago truly wants to harm me. "What will you do?" "I'll end him," Lorenzo said simply as if it were already decided. "Not just for you, but for Noah." The sunlight reflected off his cheekbones, making his gray eyes look deeper, sadder. "You always say things with terrifying certainty," she whispered. "But there's one thing you can't control." He arched a brow. "What's that?" "Your heart." He fell silent. The wind lifted a few strands of her hair, catching them on his collar. He reached up to brush them away, then stopped halfway as though touching her might make her disappear. "You think I still have a heart?" He asked, half a joke, half a wound. "If you didn't," she said softly, "you wouldn't be afraid to love." They stood there for a long moment, looking at each other. No warnings, no silver lighters engraved with trust. No one. Only the strange, fragile calm between two souls, too tired to keep pretending. By dusk, Sophia stood at her door, the black envelope still in her hands. She opened it again, flipping through the photos until she found the last one. On the back, in narrow, familiar handwriting, was a single line: "That woman will be the reason he falls." A chill crawled down her spine. If Victor truly meant to use her to break Lorenzo, then she was no longer an accidental victim. She was the spark meant to start a war. She looked out the window. Brooklyn was sinking into dusk, headlights flashing across the damp walls. And in that quiet, she remembered the lunch by the Hudson Lorenzo's weary smile, the flicker of fear in his eyes when he spoke of love. She knew his feelings were real. But whatever existed between them would never be gentle. It was a fire beautiful, warm, and fragile, and all it would take was a breath of wind to turn it to ash. Sophia set the envelope down beside the silver lighter. She flicked it open. A small blue flame trembled, reflecting her face in the mirrored surface. That tiny light was enough to reveal a truth she had never dared to speak. From the moment she pulled Noah from the burning car, her life had been bound to Lorenzo Whitmore. And now, she didn't know whether she was searching for him, or searching for a way to escape the fire. Night in Manhattan carried the scent of iron and smoke, the aroma of a city that never sleeps. Sophia sat in the ambulance, the flashing red light cutting across her face, dividing it between shadow and flame. A call had just come in: a shooting at the East Industrial District. She didn't understand why her heart was pounding faster than usual. Maybe it was fatigue. Or maybe it was because of the name she had caught over the police radio: Whitmore Warehouse. The ambulance sped through narrow streets, siren howling above the wind. When they arrived, the scene that unfolded made her breath catch: a scorched warehouse surrounded by police tape, officers everywhere, and men in black guarding the perimeter with military precision. One officer recognized her and motioned her forward. "One critical injury. Follow me. But be careful, and don't ask too many questions." Sophia stepped inside. Blood stained the concrete floor. A man lay slumped, bleeding from a shoulder wound, and beside him Lorenzo Whitmore. He was crouched low, white shirt soaked in blood, pressing his hand against the wound. When he looked up and saw her, time itself seemed to stop. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. She knelt beside him. "I'm a paramedic. He needs a transfusion immediately. My men will handle it," he replied. But he didn't stop her. Sophia pressed gauze to the wound, her hands trembling with a feeling that was both familiar and distant. His breath brushed against her neck, warm, smoky, laced with tension. "Who did this?" she whispered. He was silent for a long moment, then said in a low voice, "Victor Drago." "He's done threatening me." Sophia felt her pulse tighten. In that instant, as he spoke that name, she knew she had stepped one layer deeper into his world, where the line between love and fear was only as thin as a breath. When the ambulance finally pulled away, Sophia remained outside the warehouse, watching Lorenzo speak with his men. The yellow light from the floodlamps cast his face in cold, hard angles. He no longer looked like the calm man from the Hudson lunch, but the man he truly was, a kingpin, someone who could decide life or death with a single nod. Sergio approached quietly. "Ms. Bennett, you should go. It's not safe tonight." "Not safe," she echoed, "because I've seen too much." He hesitated. Then his eyes softened. "No, because the boss is becoming the man he buried years ago. And you make him weak." The words hit harder than she expected. Weakness in Lorenzo's world. That was the greatest sin. That night, Sophia returned home near dawn. Rain poured down, heavy and relentless, as if trying to wash away the blood still clinging to her sleeves. She took off her watch and stood before the mirror, staring at her pale reflection. She no longer saw a paramedic. She saw a woman being pulled into the whirlpool of power and danger. Her phone buzzed a message from an unknown number. "If you stay near him, next time the blood will be yours." Sophia exhaled sharply. She deleted the message, but the feeling of being watched clung to her skin. Pulling the curtain aside, she looked down to the street and froze. A figure stood beneath a flickering streetlight, half of his face visible, the rest swallowed by shadow. Then the light went out. She stepped back, her heartbeat erratic. No matter how many locks she turned, safety was now an illusion. The next morning, Lorenzo appeared at the ambulance station. He wore a black suit without a tie. Exhaustion shadowed his sharp eyes. Everyone stared the infamous Whitmore, walking into their modest workplace like a ghost from another world. He walked straight to Sophia. "I need to speak with you." Arms crossed. Her tone was ice cold. "Do you even realize what it means to come here? Victor's people could be watching." "I know," he said evenly. "But I can't let you out of my sight anymore." Sophia flinched. "That's not care, Lorenzo. That's control." He said nothing for a moment. Then, softly, "If you die, Noah loses the only person who makes him smile, and I lose what's left of my humanity." The words cut deep, not to hurt her, but to trap her heart where escape was impossible. That evening, a call came from Sergio. His voice was tense. "Ms. Bennett, Victor's on the move. He knows who you are. The boss is coming for you. You need to be ready." "No," she shouted. "I can't keep running. I'm not your hostage. You don't understand. Victor doesn't threaten. He destroys." Before she could reply, an explosion shattered the air below her apartment. The windows rattled violently. Smoke poured in. Sophia bolted for the hall. The stairwell was a haze of smoke and sirens. Through the chaos, a strong arm grabbed her. Lorenzo. His shirt was dusted with ash, eyes red from smoke, but his voice stayed calm, steady as iron. "Come with me." He pulled her outside, into the car, speeding through the night. Behind them, her apartment was swallowed by fire. She looked back, tears burning her eyes. Everything she'd built gone in minutes. "It's him," she whispered. "Victor." Lorenzo's grip on the wheel tightened, his voice low and cold. "He wanted me to see what I fear most." And he succeeded. They reached the Whitmore estate just before dawn. Sophia sat in silence, trembling. Lorenzo handed her a cup of tea. She didn't take it. "Are you planning to keep me here forever until I know you're safe? And if I don't want that?" He met her eyes, his expression softening. "Then I'll let you go. If I can." She gave a broken laugh. "Do you even know what I've lost?" "Lorenzo. My home, my life, everything I had is gone. And you just watched." "I didn't want that," he said, stepping closer. "I tried to keep my distance, but when I saw the fire, all I could think about was you." Sophia looked up, eyes glistening. Is that pity? No. It's love. The words fell slowly, each one like a bullet to the heart. Sophia froze, unsure whether to believe or to run. In his eyes there was no arrogance, no ownership, only fear, fear of losing her. She shook her head. Your love kills, Lorenzo. Maybe, but without it, I'd already be dead. He turned and walked away, leaving her with the cold tea and the white lilies on the table. That night, sleep wouldn't come. Sophia stepped out onto the balcony. Below, bathed in moonlight, Lorenzo stood alone in the garden, phone pressed to his ear. The silver glow traced the loneliness in his frame. She caught fragments of his voice drifting upward. No one touches her. If he comes near again, end it. Sophia closed her eyes. She knew in that moment he had crossed the line he once swore never to cross. The next morning, Sergio handed her an envelope. The boss said, if you want to leave, there's a new passport, a plane ticket, and enough money to disappear. But if you stay, you'll have to accept everything that comes with it. Sophia looked inside. A passport, a one-way ticket, a new name, Lisbon, a different life. But when she closed her eyes, all she saw were Lorenzo's gray eyes, the ones that still burned behind smoke and blood. She whispered, almost to herself, if I leave, who will protect Noah? Who will keep him human? Sergio lowered his head. Maybe that's why he never told you to go. Sophia clenched the envelope in her hand and looked up at the gray sky. She knew the path ahead had no return. Blood, secrets, and love, the three threads now knotted together, binding her to him forever. When she turned back, Lorenzo was standing in the doorway, eyes dark, one hand tucked into his pocket. Between them, silence so heavy she could hear both their hearts beating. Will you leave? He asked quietly. Sophia stepped closer, stopping just inches away. Her voice trembled, but her words were clear. I'll stay, but not for you. Then for who? For Noah. And because I need to know who the man I'm trusting truly is. Lorenzo looked at her for a long time. For the first time, his eyes held no certainty, no control, only the fragile look of a man who knew that sometimes, to love, is to stand willingly at the edge of ruin. Outside, the wind rose, carrying the faint scent of white lilies through the air. A new chapter of fate had begun, where love and guilt shared the same shade of red. Morning at the Whitmore estate was wrapped in a peculiar stillness. Sunlight crept timidly through the curtains, slipping across the room where Sophia sat, its pale glow like diluted fog. On the table, a bouquet of white lilies had just bloomed, each fragile petal opening as if to breathe. She tried to look away, yet the scent lingered, persistent, haunting, like the breath of a secret that refused to rest. She hadn't dreamed that night, but every time she closed her eyes, the flames consuming her apartment, Lorenzo calling her name through the smoke, replayed vividly, as if it had happened only moments ago. She knew, from that instant onward, there was no way back and nowhere left to hide. Noah woke early. The boy ran into Sophia's room and wrapped his small arms around her. Miss Sophia, I dreamed you fell into the water, and Dad saved you, but he lost one of his hands. Sophia stiffened slightly. She stroked his hair and forced a smile. It was just a dream. Noah, dreams aren't real. But in the dream, you were crying, he said softly, his clear eyes making her heart tremble. She held him close, listening to the tiny heartbeat against her chest. That sound reminded her why she stayed, not for Lorenzo, but for this child, for the bit of innocence she couldn't bear to see destroyed. Yet when she glanced out the window, through the pale reflection of morning light, she saw a man in a black suit standing by the garden, watching. His gaze was sharp as a blade, not Sergio, and not Lorenzo's. By noon, Lorenzo returned. He had come straight from a board meeting, fatigue etched across his features. But when he saw Sophia and Noah having lunch on the terrace, the tension in his eyes eased slightly. Should I thank you, he said, voice rough, half amused, for making him eat his vegetables? Sophia looked up, answering quietly, only if you promise not to teach your son to look at people with a businessman's eyes. Then I'll take it as a thank you. He smiled faintly. I'll try, though in my world, There are only two kinds of people, the strong and the dead. And which one do you choose to be? He met her gaze. Neither. I just choose not to lose the ones I love again. Sophia fell silent. In the sunlight, his face was fully illuminated, every hard line, every faint wrinkle carved by pain and endurance. He looked different now, no longer distant or untouchable, but like a man slowly shedding the armor he'd hidden behind for years. Later that afternoon, while Lorenzo was away meeting a partner, Sophia wandered into the garden behind the villa. There, among the rows of white lilies, stood a small grave unmarked, except for a stone etched with the initials W. She knelt and touched the cold surface. His wife, a voice asked from behind. She turned. Sergio stood there, calm as ever. Elena Whitmore, he said quietly, died in a car accident. 3 years ago. It was Victor Drago. Sergio nodded slightly. They used to be friends, until Elena died and Victor believed Lorenzo was behind it. Sophia's breath hitched. And was he? Sergio looked away. I don't know. I only know that since that day, the boss hasn't slept a single full night. She stared at the grave, a blur of pity and fear rising inside her. Lorenzo was still trapped in the vortex of his past, and somehow, she was becoming the new center of that storm. That evening, dinner was served under the soft flicker of candlelight. Noah had gone to bed early, leaving the two of them alone in the vast dining room, where only the ticking of the clock echoed. Sophia cut a piece of meat, her voice low. I met Sergio in the garden today. He told me about Elena. Lorenzo paused, eyes darkening. He shouldn't have. Are you afraid I'll know, or that I'll believe it? He set his knife down, voice measured, controlled us. Some truths, once known, make it impossible to live like an ordinary person again. You say that like I haven't already lost enough, she whispered. My home, my job, my life, what's left for me to fear? He stood, moving toward her. Your heart, he said quietly. Don't give it to someone like me. Sophia looked up, meeting his gaze. You think I don't know what you are? I just want to understand. To know how a man can live in darkness and still keep enough light to love his son. Lorenzo froze. For a moment, something cracked in his expression. He reached out and brushed her cheek a touch so light it trembled. I once promised Elena I'd never love anyone else, he said. Then you came, and I began breaking that promise. Maybe love isn't betrayal, Sophia murmured. Maybe it's proof that you're still human. Their eyes locked. In that moment, there was no right or wrong, only two people lost inside each other's loneliness. Near midnight, Sophia woke suddenly. Outside, the moonlight was dim, shrouded in a veil of dust and gray. Then she heard a faint noise downstairs. A door creaking open. Footsteps on the wooden floor. She slipped on her robe and stepped into the corridor. The hallway light flickered weakly, casting shadows across the painting of Elena on the wall. And beneath it a figure. Not Lorenzo. The man wore a leather jacket, a cap pulled low, rummaging through the desk drawer. When he heard her footsteps, he turned. The scar running from his cheek to his chin gleamed under the light. His eyes burned with cold fury. Victor Drago. Sophia stumbled back, heart hammering. But he stepped forward, voice metallic and low. You're the reason he's weak. You know that, Sophia. Love a crow long enough, and it'll stain your wings black. What do you want? She asked softly, forcing calm. I want him to suffer. And you're the only way. Before she could react, a gunshot shattered the air. Glass exploded. Lorenzo burst through the door. A struggle, the crash of bodies. A grunt of pain, and then silence. Sophia froze. Lorenzo stood there, gun in hand, breath ragged, blood dripping from his arm. On the floor, Victor lay motionless, eyes open in disbelief. You killed him, she whispered. No, Lorenzo said hoarsely. He's just unconscious. But I've lost what was left of my humanity. She rushed to him, grabbing his bleeding arm. Lorenzo, you're hurt. He looked at her and smiled faintly. As long as you're here, I don't feel pain. Outside, clouds drifted over the moon. The silver light vanished, leaving only darkness. A darkness thick enough to swallow the house. and the two trembling souls within it. By dawn, police sirens wailed across the hillside. Sergio and his men cleared the scene, taking Victor away. Sophia sat in the living room, hands still stained with blood, eyes unfocused. Lorenzo entered, his arm bandaged, his face pale. He sat across from her, saying nothing. Silence filled the space between them heavy, so tangible she could hear both their heartbeats. "Do you regret it?" she asked softly. "Yes, but not because of Victor. Because of me." He nodded. "Because I let you see the real me, the man who uses violence to protect what he loves." Sophia rose and stepped closer. She bent down, brushing her lips across his forehead. The scent of dried blood mingled with antiseptic. "I've seen you," she whispered. "The light and the dark. And I'm still here." Lorenzo closed his eyes. A single tear slid down his cheek, landing on her hand. Neither of them spoke again. Outside, the first rays of sunlight pierced the windows, glinting off the vase of lilies. Their sweet scent filled the air no longer pure, but laced with blood, medicine, and something deeper still, the scent of love after redemption has burned away. Sophia turned to him, voice calm but steady. "You know, Lorenzo, the moon isn't really silver. It only reflects light from somewhere else. Just like you, you'll shine again, as long as someone still believes in you." He didn't reply. He only took her hand tightly, desperately, as if letting go would make the world collapse. Outside, dawn broke. A new day, but also a new beginning, where love and guilt intertwined, and two souls stood at the fragile edge between light and shadow, waiting to see who would fall first. Early winter cold in New York had a way of piercing not the skin, but the heart. Outside the Whitmore mansion, the bare trees trembled in the wind. The last leaves fell, laying a pale gold shroud across the marble walkway. Sophia stood before the wide window, wrapped in a thin sweater, gazing at the gray sky. A week had passed since the night Victor Drago was captured. Yet instead of peace, the house had sunk into an almost frightening silence. Noah had been sent to a temporary boarding school for safety. They said. Lorenzo, meanwhile, barely left the basement office. No one knew what he was working on. They only saw Sergio and the men in black coming and going, carrying thick folders and speaking in hushed voices late into the night. Sophia tried to live as if nothing had changed, but she couldn't. There was something in Lorenzo's eyes these past few days, something hollow and distant, as if he had buried a part of his soul alongside his enemy. That afternoon, she brought him dinner. The basement was large, with low ceilings and warm yellow light glinting off endless shelves of files. Lorenzo stood before a wall plastered with maps, photographs, and red strings connecting them like a web spun by obsession. He didn't turn when he heard her steps. "You should stay upstairs," he said, his voice rough and cold. "You haven't eaten since morning." "I'm not hungry." Sophia set the tray down and glanced around. Scattered across the desk were bank statements, share lists, and in the center, a small photograph of a young woman with dark hair and a gentle smile, Elena Whitmore. "What are you looking for?" she asked softly. He turned at last, fatigue flickering behind his eyes. "The truth," he said. "I thought Victor caused Elena's death, but these papers say otherwise. Someone else was behind it." "You mean her accident wasn't Victor's doing?" "Not only that," he replied, his voice tightening. "It wasn't an accident at all." Sophia froze. He snatched up a document and slammed it onto the table. The forensic report. The brakes were cut. The signature, the company's legal aid. "He's vanished." "And on his account?" "Money wired from a firm owned by my father." Lorenzo's eyes burned red. "Elena didn't die because of Victor. She died because of the Whitmore name." The air went still. Sophia stepped closer, trying to touch his hand, but he pulled away. "You don't understand. I loved her, and I still killed her, in a way. And now I love you, the only person who makes me forget her for a moment." Sophia said nothing. She simply looked at him, a man trapped in his own tragedy, caught between two women who mirrored love and loss. That night, the wind rattled the glass doors. Sleep wouldn't come. Sophia wandered into the garden, where moonlight fell upon the lilies, turning them ghostly white. A sound behind her footsteps. She didn't need to turn to know it was Lorenzo. "Didn't think you'd still be awake," she said. "I'm afraid that if I close my eyes, everything will collapse," he murmured. She looked at him. The moonlight carved tired, proud lines across his face. "You can't keep fighting the past forever. Lorenzo, without the past, what am I?" "You're still the present," she said gently. "You still have Noah. You still have me." He was silent for a long time. Then suddenly, he took her hand, pulling her close. "And what if my present hurts you, then I'll endure it." His breath trembled against her lips, warm and unsteady. She didn't know who leaned in first. Only that, in that instant, their mouths found each other. The kiss wasn't wild, it was desperate, wrapped in tenderness. The kind of kiss that knows there's no way back. When he drew away, his eyes were bright. "I shouldn't have done that." "But you did," she whispered so softly only he could hear. The next morning, Sergio entered with a grim expression. "Boss, we've got a problem. Someone leaked the company's financial data. The police are opening an investigation, and they might come here." Sophia looked at Lorenzo. His face was calm, almost cold. "Let them," he said. "I have nothing left to hide. You don't understand. If they uncover what happened with Victor, you won't walk free." "Victor's alive," Sophia interrupted, eyes widening. "He's alive?" Sergio avoided her gaze. "Yes, he woke up, and he's claiming Whitmore attacked him first." The air thickened. Lorenzo gripped the armrest, nails cutting into his skin. "So that's his move, bring me down by law." "Clever." Sophia stepped forward, voice trembling. "You need to let the police handle it. You can't keep fighting everyone." "The police," he gave a short, bitter laugh. "Who do you think they'll protect?" "Sophia." "The powerful businessman, or the orphan raised by Victor Drago." She grasped his hand. "If you keep fighting the world, you'll lose yourself." He stared at her for so long, the room seemed to fade. Then, quietly, "If I have to choose between losing myself or losing you, I'll choose the first." 3 days later, the police came. News spread everywhere, Whitmore Corporation under international money laundering investigation. Reporters swarmed the gates, cameras flashing like lightning. Sophia barely understood what was happening. Lorenzo was escorted out, his face carved from stone. Before stepping into the police car, he turned back and said softly, "Trust no one, not even Sergio. And keep Noah safe." The door slammed shut. She stood frozen amid the chaos, her hands trembling. It all felt like a dream or a nightmare. That afternoon, Sergio arrived. He removed his coat, revealing a fresh wound on his shoulder. "Miss Bennett, listen to me." Lorenzo was framed. "The man behind everything is his father, Thomas Whitmore. He wants the company back. Lorenzo was just the pawn." Sophia's voice shook. "And Elena?" "Yes. She found out about the laundering and tried to expose it. Thomas ordered the crash. Victor was only the final scapegoat. Everything inside her collapsed." "Why didn't Lorenzo tell me? Because he was afraid you'd leave." That night, she went to see Lorenzo at the detention center. The interrogation room was stark and cold. He sat behind a glass wall, eyes calm but fractured. "You knew I'd come," she said. He smiled faintly. "I hoped you wouldn't. You can't bear this alone forever. Lorenzo, I've lived my whole life that way. You think I'm not used to it, but this time, you have me. For the first time." His gaze faltered. "If you stay, they'll use you to break me. Don't do that, Sophia. Leave the city." She shook her head. "I made my choice. I'm not running anymore." He looked at her a long moment, then lifted his hand to the glass, aligning it with hers. "Then promise me, if I don't come back, live for both of us. Don't talk like you've already chosen an ending." He smiled. "I've only chosen one thing to love you, no matter the cost." As Sophia stepped out of the center, the winter wind rushed through the corridor, carrying the scent of iron and salt. She stopped and looked up at the gray sky. Snowflakes, the first of the season, began to fall. On the marble steps before the gate, a single drop landed. She couldn't tell if it was melted snow or her own tear. In that moment, she understood their love was never meant to save. It was a requiem two souls lost in a world of power, guilt, and wounds that would never heal. And yet, within that darkness, they had found something the light never gave, a love deep enough to hurt. That morning, snow blanketed the entire city. Every sound grew smaller, swallowed by the soft hush of winter. Sophia walked down the street toward St. Bartholomew's Church, where she was supposed to meet Sergio. She had never seen the city so silent. Even her footsteps echoed, as if from another world distant, cold and sad. In her hand was a thick envelope. The documents inside Sergio said could save Lorenzo, but they could also destroy him if they fell into the wrong hands. When she arrived, Sergio was already there, standing by the wooden pews, the light falling across his face half in shadow, half in gold. "I'm not sure I'm doing the right thing," she said. "You're doing what's necessary," he replied, voice calm but eyes unreadable. "These documents prove Thomas Whitmore is behind everything. But to release them publicly, we'll need Lorenzo's consent. You think he'll agree to destroy his own family if he doesn't? He'll die in prison, and you'll never see him again." Sophia tightened her grip on the envelope. It felt as heavy as a beating heart. When she left the church, snow had begun to fall harder. The streetlights were dusted white, and few people walked the roads. She stopped in front of a small cafe, the same one where she and Lorenzo had once sat. The first time he truly smiled, telling her about Noah learning to ride a bike. She stepped inside. The air was warm, filled with the scent of roasted coffee and soft vanilla. She took her usual seat and opened her phone. There was a single unread message, no sender name. "Don't trust Sergio. He works for Whitmore too." Her hand trembled. The message was short, cold, yet it froze every vein in her body. She looked around the glass walls, reflected rows of empty chairs. No one seemed suspicious. But the feeling of being watched pressed the air from her lungs. She stood abruptly and left the cafe, crossing the street as the snow thickened. Wind slashed against her skin, and her thoughts spun wildly. If the message was true, then everything she planned to do to save Lorenzo could be a trap. That night, Sophia went to the detention center. The officer on duty recognized her and nodded her through. Her heart pricked with 1,000 needles as she stepped inside the visiting room. Lorenzo was already there, waiting. He looked thinner, but his eyes were the same, not the light of hope, but of a man who'd long learned to live in darkness. "Sophia," he said softly, "you shouldn't come anymore. You know I won't listen. You've always been stubborn." She sat down and placed the envelope on the table. "I have documents. About Thomas Whitmore. About Elena. Everything." He froze. For a fleeting second, his eyes were no longer cold. They were the eyes of someone watching the dead rise from the earth. "Who gave them to you, Sergio?" Lorenzo gave a faint, bitter smile. "I figured, he's been waiting for this." She leaned forward. "What do you mean Sergio was never loyal to me? He was loyal to Thomas. He's the one who cut Elena's brakes." Sophia's breath caught. "No, he told me he wanted to help us." "Help." He shook his head slowly. "No, Sophia. He just needed you to do the dirty work he wouldn't touch. He knew you'd risk everything for me." Her voice trembled. "Then what do I do?" Lorenzo looked at her for a long time before answering, his tone low, steady, heartbreakingly gentle. "Don't trust anyone, not even me. What are you afraid of? That once you know the truth, you'll leave me?" Her eyes glistened. "I'm not afraid of the truth. I'm only afraid of losing you." He lifted his hand, touching the glass between them. "If I could, I'd wish we'd never met, because you make me want to be good, and good men don't last long in my world." She placed her hand against his. Their palms aligned perfectly through the cold barrier, two halves destined to break together. When she left the center, snow was still falling. A black car waited down the street. Sergio stepped out, his hands buried deep in his coat pockets. "You saw him?" "Yes." "What did he say that you betrayed him?" Sergio chuckled softly. "I thought he might." He always knew how to plant doubt. "But remember this, Sophia. Truth is just the mask people use to hide something worse. What do you mean Lorenzo killed for the Whitmore secret? Do you think he'd have survived this long without me?" Her gaze hardened. "What are you playing at?" "Sergio, No game, just a choice. Hand me the documents and save Lorenzo, or keep them and watch him burn. I don't trust you. He shrugged, a razor-thin smile crossing his lips. Trust doesn't matter. I only need your fear. And with that, he turned away, leaving her standing in the snow, heart splintering beneath the weight of confusion. That night, Sophia returned to the Whitmore mansion. The house was dark, cold, and hollow. She went straight to the basement and switched on the light. The maps and red strings were still there, but on the desk, there was something new. A photograph. Of her. Taken from afar. She froze. Someone had been inside and had been watching her. Across the photo, in jagged handwriting, were the words, "Everything has a price. You've chosen your side." She sank into the chair, clutching her head in both hands. Lorenzo's words echoed inside her. Don't trust anyone. Not even me. But if she couldn't trust anyone, what did she have left? The next morning, the phone rang. Miss Sophia Bennett. This is the Metropolitan Police. We need you to come to the detention center. Lorenzo Whitmore is missing. The phone slipped from her hand. Her heart stopped for a beat. Missing. The word tolled in her mind like a funeral bell. She rushed there. The entire facility was under lockdown. The police said he'd been transferred for witness protection, but no one knew where. Sergio was gone too. Sophia stood in the snowy courtyard, the wind whipping her hair, her breath a ghostly mist. It felt like the world was breaking apart, piece by piece like ice cracking beneath her feet. That night, in the empty house, she opened the envelope again. Between the pages, a small photograph slipped out. Not of Elena, not of Thomas, of herself younger, long hair, eyes filled with fear. On the back, a trembling line of handwriting read, "You are what's left of the past." Sophia's fingers shook. And in that moment, memory flooded back, a flash of fire, an explosion, someone's hands pulling her from the wreckage, a deep voice through the smoke saying, "Don't look back, Sophia. From now on, your name is Bennett." No, it couldn't be. She staggered to her feet, her pulse hammering. Everything snapped into focus like lightning. The name Bennett was never hers. Her past, the fire, the lost years all orchestrated by the Whitmores. And Lorenzo, perhaps he'd known all along. She fell to her knees, gasping, tears burning her skin. They splashed onto the cold marble floor, vanishing like snow. Outside, the storm went on slow, relentless as if even time itself had stopped to witness the truth unearthed from the ashes. And inside that empty house, a woman sat learning how to love the man who had destroyed the life she once lived. Night fell slowly over the city. Golden streetlights stretched along Fifth Avenue, glimmering on the wet snow. Sophia stood by the overpass, the wind weaving through her hair, brushing against the collar of her white sweater. She no longer felt the cold, only the hollow ache spreading quietly through her chest. Lorenzo had been missing for 3 days. No one knew where he was, not even the police. And Sergio, once an ally, now a shadow swallowed by the dark. She could still see that photograph, the one that had awakened the fragment of memory she thought she'd buried forever. You are what's left of the past. Those words clung to her like a curse. If that was true, if she really was part of the Whitmore bloodline, then what was this love, a redemption, a destiny, or merely fate's cruel joke, two souls lost in the same fire, trying to find warmth in each other's ashes? When she returned to the temporary apartment in Brooklyn, the snow had stopped. The yellow light from the window spilled across the white wall, where a single photograph of Noah hung. That child was the only reason she still remembered how to breathe. A knock echoed at the door, 3 soft, deliberate taps. Not the knock of a stranger. She opened the door and froze. Lorenzo. He stood there in a long coat, hair disheveled, stubble shadowing his jaw, his eyes carrying the entire weight of winter. He was thinner, paler, but alive. How did you? He raised a finger to his lips. Not now. There are ears everywhere. She pulled him inside and shut the door. Under the light, she noticed the raw cuts on his wrist, the kind made by chains. She hurried to fetch medicine, but he stopped her. No, I need to speak before I lose the chance. She looked at him, trembling. Do you know who I am? He was silent. And in that silence, She understood he knew. He had always known. I know, Sophia, or rather, Evelyn. She froze. The name struck the air like a blade. Evelyn. The name she had forgotten or been forced to forget. He stepped closer, his voice low, rough. You are Elena's half-sister. Your father is Thomas Whitmore. The world seemed to collapse inward. She staggered, clutching the edge of the table. No, that's impossible. Your father had an affair with a nurse at the Whitmore Hospital. When you were born, he feared scandal. He sent you away, changed your name, and staged a fire to erase the traces. Elena discovered the truth and tried to expose him, but before she could, she died. Sophia shook her head as tears spilled pain. Fury, disbelief tangled in her voice. And you knew all this time and still let me stay. I couldn't tell you. If you knew, Thomas would have killed you like he killed Elena. I just wanted to keep you alive. By trapping me inside a lie. He said nothing. His lips trembled. His eyes glistened. And in that moment, she saw it. He wasn't hiding to deceive. He was hiding to protect. But truth is still a blade, and love always the wound it leaves behind. She sat down, her hands shaking, drawing a deep breath. How did you escape? Someone helped me, a member of the Whitmore board. They want me to expose Thomas's crimes to save themselves. But if I do, Noah will never be safe again. Sophia's chest tightened. So you'll just let him go on? He answered quietly, I don't want another child to lose their father. But you're sacrificing the truth. Lorenzo, no, Sophia, he said, his eyes glowing with strange calm. I'm sacrificing myself. But you can still end this. You're the only one who can reach him without raising suspicion. What are you talking about? He pulled a small silver hard drive from his coat. This contains a copy of the Whitmore Group's records. Every bribe, every laundering scheme, every plan behind Elena's death. Take it to Prosecutor Hale. She stared at him, stunned. You're asking me to betray my own father, no, Evelyn? I'm asking you to free us from him. He spoke her real name for the first time, not as accusation, but as forgiveness. And in his voice, love and despair lived side by side. They sat in silence for a long time. Outside, snow began to fall again. One flake landed on his shoulder, melting slowly. Sophia looked at him, the man who carried the guilt of an empire, who loved her knowing their love was impossible. If I do this, she whispered. What happens to you? He smiled faintly, weary, but gentle. Then I'll finally stop running. Men like me belong only to memory. You're talking as if you've already chosen to disappear. I'm not choosing an end. I'm choosing to give you a beginning. She couldn't hold back anymore. She ran to him, wrapped her arms around him. His warmth broke something inside her, and she sobbed against his shoulder. Don't say that. I've lost too much already. He whispered against her ear. If there's another life, I'll love you before I know who you are. In that small room. They held each other as if it were the last time. Outside, wind swept across the window, dusting it with white. The world was still like a painting moments before it fades to gray. 3 days later, Sophia delivered the hard drive to Prosecutor Hale. The news spread quickly. The Whitmore Corporation was officially under investigation. Thomas Whitmore was arrested, but Lorenzo never appeared again. When police entered the mansion, they found only a letter on the desk. By the time you read this, I'm gone. I'm not running. I'm returning the world to you. I've lived too long in darkness. Sophia, now it's your turn to bring it light. Tell Noah his father loved him in the only way a guilty man knows how. And if one day you see a lily bloom in winter, believe that I'm still there somewhere. In your breath. Signed L.W. She sat for hours before that letter, unable to cry. Her heart felt hollow as the snow outside. Some sorrows need no tears. Silence alone can make you forget how to breathe. A week later, the ice began to thaw. Sophia took Noah away from New York to a small lakeside house in Vermont. That morning, when she opened the door, the boy shouted, "Look, Miss Sophia, the lilies are blooming." She stepped outside. In the middle of the white snow, a single lily rose fragile yet defiant. The breeze stirred, carrying a faint, familiar scent, the scent of a memory that refused to die. She knelt down and whispered, "You promised you wouldn't disappear forever. Didn't you?" No one answered. Only sunlight streamed through the clouds, glimmering across the lake. And on the water's surface, a faint reflection appeared, a man in a dark coat, standing at the far shore, watching her. She didn't know if it was real or just her heart remembering, but her pulse leapt strong, clear as if the flame of that long-ago night had flickered back to life. Sophia closed her eyes and smiled. She knew now some people don't belong to the present, but they live forever in memory. And Lorenzo Whitmore, he was the keeper of hers. He held her past, her pain, her salvation, and their unfinished love. 1 year later, winter returned to New York, but this time, the snow was gentler. The city was still alive, the lights still bright. Yet inside Sophia, everything had changed. She no longer lived in the Whitmore mansion, nor had she gone back to Vermont. Now she worked for a small charity organization, helping women who had lost everything women like her, who had once loved, once hurt, once lost. She rarely said Lorenzo's name anymore, not because she had forgotten, but because, in her heart, he had never really left. Every morning, she stopped by the Hudson River Pier, where the water flowed quietly and the sun shimmered through the silver mist. There, she would whisper softly, as if he were listening somewhere in the wind. "Can you hear me? Lorenzo, everything you left behind is still alive." The Whitmore empire had fallen. Thomas Whitmore was convicted of murder and money laundering. His name filled the newspapers, but Sophia didn't read them. For her, justice had never truly defeated tragedy. Sergio, the man who had lived between two sides, vanished after the trial. Some said he was silenced. Others said he fled to Europe. But Sophia knew men like Sergio never disappear, they only hide, waiting for darkness to call them back. Only Noah had truly changed. He had grown taller, laughed more, and called Sophia Mom with a natural ease, as if it had always been destiny. One afternoon, as Sophia was teaching Noah to write, the doorbell rang. A postman stood outside, holding a thick envelope sealed with red wax. No sender's name. She opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter, the script firm and familiar enough to stop her heart. "If you're reading this, it means I still owe you a goodbye. I've gone far away. Evelyn. To a place where no one knows my name, where there is no night. No light. I'm not dead, but I'm not alive either. I'm just still. I heard the snow in Vermont has melted. Let Noah grow up without the Whitmore name. Let him be himself, owing nothing, carrying no past. And you don't look for me, because if you find me, I'll want to stay. And that would kill me all over again. If one day you meet someone who makes your heart warm again, don't be afraid. Love never betrays anyone. It only comes when we're brave enough to love again, L." When she reached the end, Sophia's tears fell onto the page, bleeding into the ink. The words blurred, but the signature remained etched like a scar across her heart. She didn't know where the letter came from, but one thing was certain. He was still alive. Somewhere in this vast world, that man was still watching her in silence. That night, after Noah had gone to sleep, Sophia stepped out onto the balcony. Snow was falling lightly. The city glowed under a soft, golden calm. She lifted her face to the sky, letting the snowflakes melt on her skin. In that quiet moment, she thought she heard the wind whisper a voice, gentle and low, calling her name, Evelyn. She turned. No one was there. Only the empty air, cold and soft, like the breath of a memory. A month later, Sophia opened the Light Beneath Center, a foundation for those who had lost loved ones to violence. The press wrote about her, calling her the woman who survived the Whitmore tragedy and turned pain into hope. When the ceremony ended, a middle-aged man approached her. His face was unfamiliar, but his eyes made her heart tremble. "Miss Bennett," he asked quietly. "Yes, that's me. I have something for you from someone who asked me to deliver it." He handed her a small wooden box. Inside was a glass vial, holding a single dried white lily, pressed carefully between two sheets of paper. Beside it was a note, hastily written. "A lily lives only 7 days, but our love has no expiration. no name. But she didn't need one. Sophia sat down, tears falling even as she smiled. It wasn't sadness, it was a different kind of happiness, calm and tender, like breathing after the rain. A few years later, the small lake house in Vermont. On the table sat a framed photo of Lorenzo, beside Noah's messy crayon, drawing a man holding hands with two people. Below it, the word family. That winter, the lake didn't freeze. The sky was clear, the breeze soft, and from the snow-covered grass, a single white lily bloomed late. Sophia stepped outside, holding a cup of tea, and closed her eyes. If you can hear me, I've lived as you wanted. I've forgiven everything, even myself. A light breeze swept past. The lily trembled gently, and in the falling snow, she saw a faint figure, tall, lean, wrapped in a dark coat, standing by the lake, smiling at her. She felt no fear, no sorrow, only peace. Thank you, Lorenzo, she whispered, for loving me in the most beautiful way by letting go. The last light of evening washed across her face. No tears remained, only quiet. Somewhere in this world, their love still lived in the wind, in the flowers, in the memories of those who know that some loves don't need to exist to live forever. If this story touched your heart, follow the channel and share your thoughts below. Every comment is a spark that helps future stories come alive and reach more hearts.